Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another video on the channel where today we have got a great FIFA 21 tutorial about how to press and how to press effectively, and some of the things you're going to learn in today's video. They're going to include covering the most obvious pass, trying to win the ball back as quick as possible, forcing your opponent into a mistake, and the most important thing that you should take away from this video is you need to be able to use the right stick to switch player. Using the L1 button is not good enough for this method. You've got to use the right stick. So if you're not very good at using the right stick, it's something you really got to practice, because it is going to be a key throughout this video that you're going to have to really improve at using, because if you're not able to use this right stick, you are not going to be able to get the most out of pressing. Now, one thing I want to start off with is I want to go straight into some tactics, because these are important. They do have a place. Now, for me, I like to play with press on possession loss. Now, this is something that you should use if you are not fully able to manually press yourself. This is what professional players are able to do. Professional players are able to play on balance or drop back, for example, because they are good enough to press manually themselves. Now, if you're someone like me who can do a decent job pressing manually, but you might need a little bit of help every now and again, pressing on possession loss is a great way to go, because it gives you that press for that first 7 seconds. So it just gives you a little bit of help, and you're able to pair that with your manual pressing that you do yourself. And the other big factor is the depth that you play on. Now, this will dictate how high up the pitch your players are. So if you decide to play on like a 7, you're going to have players really high up the pitch, but you're obviously going to have to remember you're going to leave plenty of spacing behind for your opponent. So it's finding that balancing act of wanting to have an effective press, but not going like suicide and kamikaze. So for me, I like to play on about 5. I think that is very, very good. So now we get into the mechanics of how to press and what are we aiming to do. Now, what we're aiming to do is we're aiming to try and win the ball back. It's a mixture of trying to press and also being good at cutting the passing lanes. That is the key. You're trying to get in front of the most obvious pass. That is the pass you're trying to cover. You see a good example there. We didn't quite get the ball, but we did end up getting the turnover in the end. But that is what you're trying to do. Ultimately, you're trying to win the ball back at the top end of the pitch if you can. A great example here, trying to just get across, and again, that is what I believe to be the most obvious pass, and that is what we're trying to cover. You can see how we stick to his defender like glue, and then we force him into doing something stupid, trying to do a rainbow flick, and then he just gives the ball up, and he passes it to us, and now we have possession again. And that is ultimately what the aim of playing on a press. People think that playing on a press means you have to win the ball just at the top end of the pitch. No, it involves cutting the passing lanes, as we do again there. We cut the passing lanes, we force him into doing a silly mistake, and then we get a turnover of the ball. And like we just alluded to before, tip number 1 is going to be to try and win the ball back just after losing it. This is the most effective time to obviously win a press. This is what people think the press is, which it is. It is ultimately, you know, the term you press from the front is very, very key, and it is very true. You do try and win the ball up at the top end of the pitch. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to win it up at the top end of the pitch in the attacking third, because your opponent is still in his own defensive third. He's still in a defensive position and a defensive mindset that is going to give you the best opportunity to try and score. You can see a great example there. We won it at the edge of the box, and then we was able to turn that into a goal. Really nice example here from Sanchez. He does shake us loose with Neymar, makes it a little bit difficult for us, but then Sancho is able to get really, really, you know, aggressive and attacking, and then just turn over possession. And that is what you're aiming to do. You're aiming to try and win the ball back as high up the pitch, because that is the best time to try and press. Now, second thing that you need to try and learn and you need to remember is that it is more effective in some formations than others. Now, we've got a couple of examples coming up in this first batch of clips. You can just see how open our team is, you know, just not having the right formation. And this is what we mean. Also, you got to give props to our opponent. He was playing out really, really well. He played against the press really well. And a good way to play against the press is to play quick one-touch passing and try and find the space. But you can just see how much space there was for him to exploit in a lot of these clips. You can just see the spaces that are there, and that's because we just don't have the right formation to be able to play a press. And that's why you can't just force a press onto every formation and expect it to be effective, because there are some formations that just because of the way they set up, they just don't allow there to be a press. Again, you can see at the edge of the box, we've only got Sanchez really who's able to press, and if your opponent's got 3 or 4 players there, you can't cover every passing lane with just one player. So it does make it very, very difficult. Sanchez does end up getting the ball in the end, and that kind of smothers the attack. But you know, when you've got the wrong formation and the wrong, not necessarily personnel, because it's not about personnel. You can intercept passing lanes with anybody, but when you've got the wrong formation, you can just get outnumbered. We did end up scoring the goal there, so it didn't really matter too much in the end. Now, a couple of examples of really good formations to try and use a press with. A 4-4-2 is a great example. 4-4-1-1 is one of my favorite formations to press in. Also, you've got the 4-2-3-1 narrow, which is just seems to be an amazing formation for absolutely everything and every single playstyle. Now, the reason why something like a 4-4-1-1 is a great formation to press in is because it's a very compact formation, so it's not very easy to play through. As we talked about, you want to play those quick 1-2 passes. That's how you play against a press. But in this formation, because we have such a compact formation, it's not so easy to do that. And when you've got a compact formation, it can make it very, very easy to cut those passing lanes. But also, one of the key things is, for example, in this 4-1-2-1-2 wide, this is not a good formation to press in from my experience, because there is just the width on the outside. You know, if you're getting pressed in the left back position, you can just ping a ball over the top to your right back, and you've beaten that 7-second press. So it's important to have formations that have width, but also have quite compact midfields. They are the ones that are best for pressing. You can now see us in that 4-4-1-1 formation right here, and just see how much more difficult it is for my opponent to try and press. But then able to just get in, insert the passing lanes, get the tackle away, and then I think we're able to go on and then score a goal. But that's why playing on a press in the correct formation, you will see such a massive difference. Get a good finish there from Dybala. You'll see such a massive difference. This is given one of my opponents that I played recently some real good credit. For about 5 minutes, he pressed me absolutely flawlessly, and that's why I think he was using the 4-4-2 formation. Great formation for man marking. It's a formation that matches up very well against a lot of formations. You see a great clip here when Dybala picks up the ball here. Just see how every single pass that I have is marked. Every single player is marked. And that is a mixture of him manually pressing himself and also the press after possession loss working for him. And that's what most of us are going to do. Most of us are going to be using the press after possession loss ourselves, because we do need a little bit of help, because we're not able to manually press as well as maybe a professional would, where he doesn't have to play on the press and it can have a bit more of a solid defensive formation. But you can see how if you can manually press yourself and pairing it with the press after possession loss with the correct formation, how effective it can be. And then finally, the last tip that I have to give you is patience and practice. Now, as we said at the start of the video, using that right stick button to play a switch is super, super important. That is how you have to switch play. You can't L1 switch and expect to press, accurately, because it doesn't always switch to the correct player that you need. Whereas the right stick, switching doesn't always work perfectly, and you've got to admit that it doesn't always work perfectly, but it does give you the most accurate and the best chance to be able to press properly, because it does give you the majority of the time the correct player that you're asking for. There's no workaround. That is how you have to switch play. And you can see in plenty of examples here just how effective it is. But you can also see in this example right here how how we don't do it perfectly ourselves every time. And I think it's really good, even as somebody who's trying to teach people, to show that I'm making mistakes as well. That I should be covering that run. I should be intercepting that lane, and I was just too slow. And that's what I mean. Even for someone like me, who is a pretty decent Elite 2 standard player, Elite 1 on a really good weekend, how even someone like me can still make mistakes, because it is not an easy thing to do. It's something that requires a lot of practice, and just something that is very, very difficult to do and difficult to master. But if you keep practicing, sometimes you can get a bit unlucky like that. Sometimes you can position your player in the correct place and he still might not get the ball. So it's a difficult thing to try and master and try and learn, but it is something that I believe if you practice and you really try, you will eventually improve, and it will make a massive difference to your game, because it is something that really, really is a big factor, I think, in deciphering whether somebody is just a good player or whether somebody is a great player. But that is it for the video, guys. So if you did enjoy this video, make sure you do subscribe. Make sure you follow us on Twitter if you do have any questions you want to ask, or leave them in the comment section and we'll get around to answering them as quick as possible. But that is all for today, guys. Have an awesome day. I'm out.